Hi, I'm Pani and this is my channel. So last night Microsoft finally revealed their new Xbox successor to the 360, the Xbox One. For those of you who didn't see the footage for yourself, I figured today I'd go ahead and recap it for you and just share some of my thoughts as well. Now, one thing to keep in mind with the announcement yesterday, the focus here was on the console itself. We knew that games weren't going to be a big aspect of this reveal because it was going to focus on the hardware, the software, what's happening inside the console, not so much as the games. Despite that though, it is a games console at its core, and I did expect a little more focus on the gaming aspects than we really got. We started off the conference by learning a lot about how the Xbox One acts as a media center, which is definitely impressive. Technologically, the Xbox One is impressive, I am in no way doubting that. It's apparently running 3 operating systems at once, it's got some great specs, it can do a lot of things. They showed off using voice commands, to transition really smoothly between different screens on the Xbox, going from TVs to movies to games, with less than a second transition time, which was definitely impressive. They followed this part of the presentation up with some focuses on some new partnerships and things, using the Xbox for TV, I think it was CBS. It's all very American, so watching this part of the conference I was just thinking to myself that as cool as these parts look, I know that realistically I am personally, as an Australian, probably not going to get to experience them to the same extent as a lot of Americans can, or even at all in some cases. Which is pretty upsetting considering the fact that, again, as an Australian, I'm probably going to have to pay more for the Xbox One than people who can use these features. Something else that's definitely worth noting around this time is the fact that Microsoft pointed out that the Xbox is now being bundled and sold with the Kinect, and neither one will function without the other. The Xbox won't work without the Kinect turned on and powered on, which does sort of raise some potential concerns. I'm not saying that Microsoft are going to use the Kinect to spy on us and keep their own data trees about all the things that we do when the Xbox is on. I'm not saying they'll do that, I don't think they will, I hope they won't, but just gives you something to think about. The fact that the Kinect is always going to be on and technically has the potential to spy on our everyday lives. Now, even though this announcement was specifically to focus on the console, the hardware and things like that, they did spend some time talking about games, which I thought I would appreciate. But it turns out the games that were discussed were mostly featured around the EA Sports series, FIFA 14, Madden, NHL and UFC, which, personally, were not particularly interesting, and my Twitter feed didn't seem to find that interesting either. However, if EA Sports is something you're interested in, they did announce the new Ignite engine for the next-gen Xbox One. They also announced that for FIFA fans, Ultimate Team is going to have some exclusive options only available on Xbox One. For me, I'm not interested in that at all, but if any of you are FIFA fans, there you go. They also discussed a few other games, like a new entry in the Forza series. Again, not particularly interesting for me, I prefer my races to be much more cartoony than that, like Mario Kart. But in this case, if you're a Forza fan, might be something to look forward to. It's worth saying as well, despite the fact that I'm not interested in any of those games, they do look great on the Xbox One, and the new Ignite engine does look great for the FIFA Sports series, but, personally I found myself having a hard time trying to get into this part of the presentation. We also learned about one new IP that's coming called Quantum Dream. Unfortunately, we learned pretty much the title and that was about it. We got a cutscene kind of from the game and a very short bit that followed involving a bridge and a boat. It really explained absolutely nothing about the game. It was like a girl said she was different, she was asked why, it went to a bridge and a boat that were not getting along so well, and that was about it. So I have no idea what Quantum Dream is about, but apparently it's going to involve boats. Halo was also mentioned, which is a nice surprise. However, unfortunately, Halo games weren't. What they did announce, which is something definitely interesting for Halo fans, is a live-action Halo TV series that's coming, directed by Steven Spielberg. So that was definitely something unexpected from the event. I would have preferred news based on games, but this is pretty much the closest that I got, I guess. Unfortunately, again, that was pretty much all that we got out of that announcement. Halo TV series, directed by Steven Spielberg, a few words were spoken, but no more information was really given. At the very end of the presentation, we did get to see some Call of Duty Ghosts running on the Xbox One. Microsoft do tend to use Call of Duty quite a bit in their E3 presentations, so this wasn't really unexpected. They went into detail about the graphics, the new engine including fish that are smart enough to get out of your way when you swim towards them, which is apparently something very important in Call of Duty. Not to be a complete down though, the Call of Duty footage does look great, the graphics are nice, you know, the game does look good for a Call of Duty game. It's following the same formula as always, I think, but they're always polishing it up a bit. They did introduce customizable characters in multiplayer, and the dogs are better. If you watch the presentation yourself, you'll see how much work they put into the dogs. They really talked about the dogs in the new Call of Duty game a lot. They also promised a gameplay video, and I thought to myself, you know, finally we're going to see the Xbox One in action, running a game, not running TV, not running a movie, not showing some pre-rendered cutscene. We're going to see gameplay, this is great. Sat down to watch it, got really excited, even though it's only Call of Duty, you know, still pretty pumped. And they didn't really seem to show any gameplay. It was more, if it was gameplay, they used cinematic camera angles that made it not look like gameplay at all, but I have a hard time believing that anything they showed during that portion was actual gameplay. Here is the thing, I completely understand this was a console reveal. We weren't going to get a lot of talk about the games, we weren't going to be introduced to the library because that's all happening at E3 in just a couple of weeks. But at its core, when it comes down to it, the Xbox is a gaming console, and at a console reveal, I wanted to see what it could bring to gaming that other consoles of this generation can't do. I wanted to see why the Xbox One, I wanted to see why I should buy that over the Wii U or the PS4. I wanted to know how that has evolved from the 360 in terms of what it does for gaming. All I saw was the Kinect, which we've seen before. Admittedly, apparently they've done some new tweaks to the Kinect. It definitely recognises body movement, probably better than the current Kinect, but they really didn't sell me on why I should buy an Xbox One, which is what I wanted them to do. I wanted them to talk me into giving them their money so I could have this console and be really excited about it, and instead I left feeling not excited at all. I left thinking, alright, well I'll buy a PS4, I've got my Wii U, and I'm not decided if I'll buy an Xbox One yet. I wanted them to somehow tease me for E3 and leave me looking forward to E3, anticipating to see what games they would announce. Instead, all I got was that they'll have 15 exclusive titles coming out in the next year. They'll have 8 IPs, that's fantastic, but they told me no information. How do these differ from the ones on the 360? Who knows? And that's what I wanted to know. Couple of things before I go, some information that wasn't discussed on the Xbox One stream, but it has popped up online in the hours following. So first of all, the Vice President of Microsoft, Phil Harrison, commented in an interview that the Xbox One is going to require an online connection at least once every 24 hours in order to provide updates and new content to the Xbox One. He didn't elaborate as to what will happen if you don't get the connection within 24 hours, if you're not going to be able to play anything, not going to be able to access certain parts of games. He didn't elaborate on that, but it's definitely worrying to hear that 24-hour thing. It's close to always online, definitely not to the same extent, but it's still not a fantastic situation if you don't have an internet connection or for whatever reason you don't have one for 24 hours. However, Microsoft have since then clarified this statement, saying that Phil Harrison's scenario was only a potential scenario, it wasn't anything that was set in stone yet, and that we shouldn't really take any of those things for fact, which is a little concerning, the fact that Microsoft's vice president apparently isn't up to date on what the Xbox One really needs. Also, we have been introduced to the very real possibility that the Xbox One will be blocking used games, due to the fact that any game that is played on the console will require installation to the hard drive. And it will also be linked to an Xbox Live account, meaning I guess that once you try to play that on a different console, be it a second console of yours or a friend's console or someone you've sold the game to, Xbox Live is going to recognize that that game isn't linked to their account and may make them purchase it again, I guess. I guess this might sort of tie in with that 24-hour check-in online thing as well, but I mean, I don't know what's going to happen, because you could say, well, okay, I'll just turn my Xbox offline, then I just won't connect to the internet, it won't know it's not linked to my account, problem sorted out. But what if it doesn't let you play games if you've not connected within 24 hours, if that first scenario was real? It's all very confusing at this point, and I definitely want to hear some answers in regards to those two things specifically. Because at this point, not only has the Xbox reveal, first of all, underwhelmed me, because at this point I just don't feel like buying one, but second of all, those concerns raised, the last two things I mentioned, they've made me a little more concerned, a little more hesitant towards buying a console from them, and at this point I think they're really going to have to set their game up for E3. They're going to have to skip all of this living room nonsense, all of this change the way your house is nonsense at E3. If they go into all this at E3 again, I will be so annoyed, because they need to skip all that. They've done it. jump right into the games at E3. That's all I want to see at E3 from them. And they need to clarify these last two things, the always online, the online check-in, and the used games. I need clarification. I need to know what my console is going to allow me to do and what it's going to restrict me from doing. But that is pretty much the Xbox reveal. I can't really think of anything else massive that was discussed there. It was a lot of concentration about the console, the living room changes, what it will do to your living room. It will change your entire living room, and it's all very interesting, but not super gamey. If you watched it yourself, let me hear your thoughts. Otherwise, any thoughts you have about the Xbox, please let me know in the comments because I would love to read them as always. And I guess that's everything for today, so thanks as always so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon for more gaming videos.